Hi, this is Lindsay, one of the co-hosts of Beauties and Headcanons. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hey everyone, it's Selena and you're listening to Stories from Planet Earth. Today we are here virtually with Adrienne.
Ooh. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Currently back home from some adventures abroad. I was in Costa Rica, so I'm here in Wisconsin at my family's house.
I usually ask first thing where my guests are from or where they're currently situated, and you just went through a major move.
Yeah, so I guess some little background of me. So I am originally from Thailand. I was adopted from there, so grew up in Colorado and just been bopping around. So most recently I was down in Costa Rica. I worked there for a travel company. So it's been, about almost 3 years, 2.5 years, a little more than that I was down there. So with everything going on, and sadly being one of those people who's lost a job due to COVID-19, it was better for me to come back, but it was kind of crazy figuring out if that was an option that was able to do with borders closing and just flights out of the country and things like that. So was able to come back on one of the embassy flights, or flights coordinated by the embassy. So that was wild.
Wow, I could imagine.
Yeah, so normally with my job that I had, I was a contractor, whatever that is, contracted. And it was from like August to August that the contract was, so a full year. So I started last August until now. So yeah,
wild times. What was it like having to arrange all of that and travel in the midst of this whole pandemic?
It was such a roller coaster, and I feel like it was in such a small span of time. Everything just kind of hit the fan mid-March. So it was very interesting. I actually was in Brazil for about a month and a half, beginning of the year, so mid-January into beginning of March. And so I was able to work abroad, even more so abroad from my job. And just a little background. So I was a travel operations assistant for a travel company. So yeah, it was crazy being in Brazil and just being like, planning of, kind of next adventures with the company, and then coming back and things kind of blowing up, and slowly people are getting laid off and things are getting, cut within the company, and just trying to logistically figure out what we're doing as a company to stay afloat and start kind of hibernation in the sense of just being lean, and then dealing with that as a job, and then figuring out, how do I go back home? Like, do I come back home? Like right now, Costa Rica is doing really well. So currently they have about 700 cases, but it wasn't, doubling or tripling or anything like that. You'd see a couple cases, a day maybe. And so it was just talking to family like, I guess I should stay here because right now this is where my job is. And, look at that, the borders are closed now. And so, sending interns that were down there with the company back home, and then people who are full-time, just kind of figuring out, okay, I guess I'm just here for the long haul. We were getting emails through the STEP program, it's via the embassy, and they were kind of saying, once the borders closed, flights will be leaving, but after that, just be ready to be there indefinitely, which is a very crazy thing to read. You're like, okay, indefinitely, let's do it. So, just with the job, trying to retain people and being remote and staying in touch with family and friends and social distancing down there, and people were really good at staying in, so it didn't feel too weird. I mean, kind of similar to here, it sounds like at the grocery stores, people were, keeping distant and had to be in a line and wait till you can be inside, and they were giving you hand sanitizer and things like that, but it didn't feel too odd. But definitely really quiet when you're out on the streets if you did go on a walk and things like that. So seemingly, the same here. But yeah, so just kind of weighing out those options, and finally, I made the decision to come back to the U.S. because it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to have a job by the end of the month and going to be let go. And it looks like with the airlines and borders that I'm not going to be able to get a flight back until June, because I originally booked a flight beginning of May, trying to get in touch with the airline to get an understanding of, hey, like, if the border closure is extended, will that push off flights? Like, what does operations look like? I know you can't guarantee anything, but what the heck is going on, And yeah, the woman that I finally got in touch with, she's like, honestly, I would just get on that flight that's being organized by the embassy and just get back if that's really what you want. So for me, it was just made sense financially, and just kind of, ripping off the Band-Aid and, you know what, I don't want to be here for a month or more, possibly without a job. And even if it's with my community and certain, colleagues down there, that, it's probably time for me to come home.
Right. And did any of your colleagues end up going back to their respective corners of the world too, or were a lot of them from Costa Rica?
A lot of them are from the U.S. There's a couple other places, UK, Canada, but mostly people who are working for the company were from the U.S. So it was kind of in waves. So the beginning, it was the interns that their program was ended, so they went home. That was, of course, not their choosing. And then some other colleagues who were full-time did choose to go home. That was a couple. And then I think right now, so just number-wise, to get a sense, there's about 30 people that were down there via the internship, full-time, in the office in Costa Rica. And now there's probably 6 people down there still who are still working with the company, and I think they're going to be probably let go soon, so they're kind of deciding whether they should come back or not, and if they can, when that will be. So probably most likely in June, but yeah, so it's like slow comeback, but they're hanging on down there and figuring out, so in a bunch of group chats, just keeping updated to see, how they feel.
Yeah. Well, I'm so sorry that everything kind of came crashing down so fast on you.
Yeah, I mean, it was a weird and super, coming from a very fortunate, privileged place, where it's like, you know what, I think I was kind of ready for something new, in the sense, I really did enjoy my job, but I was ready to live somewhere else.
Yeah.
So, and just understanding, there's so many other people going through the same thing and have it worse. And I still have my health and a really good support system, and had so many amazing memories from my experience with the company and work and living abroad. So just kind of keeping hold of that. But I think now it's just really sad that, hoping that the company, whether or not I'm part of it right now, that, they'll get through the storm, and I think I feel worse about the partners all around the world and all the communities that we were in touch with and supporting, and that they're really hurting, and that tourism as a whole, it's a huge economic driver for so many countries around the world that, really holds us together in a lot of ways. So we'll see how the industry goes and just the rest of the world. It's such a weird time.
Yeah, we're all feeling it at different degrees right now. It's just, I don't think there's ever been this amount of collective uncertainty in a really long time. So it's just kind of, like, I hadn't even thought about the fact that tourism is being affected to such a degree right now. And it's true, like, a lot of places rely on that.
I think when I think about it, of all the different facets, can really make up the field if you're looking into food and transportation and entertainment and activities and housing and accommodations. It really makes up a lot.
Yeah, right. But I am happy at least that you have a positive perspective moving forward.
For sure.
With your own life, yeah.
Figure things out, it's just gonna be another adventure going forward. Just something, never thought of would happen.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are trying to hang on to that there's going to be something new new and maybe better after this, hopefully.
For sure.
Taking a step back, though, I wanted to talk about your time in Costa Rica and why you initially went there and just how it was living there.
Sure. So I have always had an interest in travel, and I think, that kind of goes back to me being adopted and having, the opportunities to go back to Thailand, really dive into a different culture and see that, traveling other places, whether that was around the US, but actually with my family, we traveled to Costa Rica. It was for my sister's high school graduation kind of present. I think it was probably more of a, let's say it's a graduation present, but we want to actually go traveling as a family abroad. So I got a taste for it when I was younger. So I think I was in early high school when that happened. So that kind of sparked things, actually. We went to a really cool lodge that was out in the middle of nowhere, and we were able to go rafting and learn about the local community there and just be in this kind of tented canopy lodge in the middle of Costa Rica, and it was so cool. And I remember there was a guy that was an intern there, and I think I was like, what? You're an intern, you're out here? That's so amazing. So I was, I think, really inspired by that. And when I went to college, CSU, go Rams, where we were, and they had a recreation and tourism, and so I just followed that and was looking into trying to figure out, after college, what my values were and what I really wanted to kind of dive into. So I knew I wanted to do some sort of travel that was meaningful. And so I found out about this company. And of course, one of the things that you hear about when you're younger but doesn't really click, where it's like not what you know, but who you know. And it was a weird connection. Like, my mom's friend's daughter did a program with this company called Global Leadership Adventures, which focuses on programs for high schoolers throughout the summer that do volunteer work and leadership building. So I found out about this company, and they did this internship for people down in Costa Rica, and that you were doing sales, basically, and other work if it was, during the summer when programs were happening, doing on-call, things like that. So anyway, I was like, yeah, sure, sales. This sounds like something up my alley. I worked at the study abroad office, was out in college, and I'd studied abroad, so it's like kind of bringing that into it and working with youth and really showing them the world in a different way that's not just classic volunteerism, but really trying to develop them and be advocates for certain communities and just expand their horizon and just sense of self through different projects and programs around the world. So yeah, I came down with that, but eventually switched over to a different part of the company, which was Discover Corps, or is Discover Corps. And that sector that I was working with focuses on meaningful and purposeful vacations. So somewhat similar core value, but with families and older people and solo travelers and all that. So for instance, people will go to Thailand and work with more ethical elephant sanctuaries and being able to have their time there and work with the mahouts, who are people who take care of the elephants, and learn from them about everything you need to know about elephants, but being able to also have, time on the island and do kind of touristy things, visit temples, but do it in smaller groups where you get to know each other and people who are like-minded, and do something that's more than just relaxing at the beach all the time.
Yeah, that's so amazing. I love that concept.
Yeah, so a lot of different, countries. Costa Rica, we had people come down there, Galapagos, South Africa, Thailand, all over. So Cuba. So I had opportunities to go on some of these trips, see them in person and see travelers, which was really humbling and inspiring too, where people are choosing, to do something a little bit more on their time off, especially in the U.S. when you don't really have a lot of vacation time. So
right.
I know too, throughout this whole COVID thing, it's been really great to have really good people who believe in your mission and work that you do and are hanging on there with you when they can easily just, request a refund.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was down there, worked for this company, Costa Rica. Very interesting, kind of being an expat, because we created this community where it was pretty much a bubble with your colleagues, and I feel like I have a lot of experiences in life through work where you just are with your work friends and creating that community there. So it's kind of hard sometimes to get out of that and meet people outside of work. And of course, there's that extra barrier with language. So I studied Spanish when I was in college and high school. And of course, that's, completely different when you're in a different country. I feel like when I studied abroad in Spain when I was in college, and I thought I had a good grasp on things, and then got there and host families talking to, and you're like,
yeah, it's humbling, isn't it? You're like, I totally know Spanish, and then you go to a place where it's primarily Spanish speaking, and you're like, wow, I don't know any Spanish.
Yeah, so luckily Costa Rica, at least compared to my experience in Spain, their accent, I guess you could say, is pretty neutral, and there's not a lot of there is a lot of slang, but after you learn the slang, you're like, wow, that's predominantly what I hear, especially with people of similar age, like in their 20s or younger. You're like, oh, wow, they say that a lot. But it was easier to kind of pick up again. But it was still hard because I know that's something I feel like a lot of people have challenges or struggle with when learning a new language. I know I kind of set the bar pretty high, where I'm not, people ask like, oh, you lived there for a while, then you must be fluent. And I kind of timid and hesitant, like, oh, well, I mean, yeah, I feel comfortable. I don't know if I'd say completely fluent, because I feel like there's that standard of, oh, it's going to be exactly the same level as my English, which it will never be, because that's my mother tongue or whatever. It's my first language, so how I think will be always in English, or it's kind of hard to have another language at the same level. But maybe not. I don't know.
Definitely.
I mean, there's so many different people, different upbringings, who might say it's more equal, or maybe not if they grew up learning two languages at the same time.
Yeah, learning a new language is really hard. Spanish was technically my first language, but I moved from Puerto Rico to Colorado when I was about like 4 or 5. So I had to learn English really fast. And I retained some of the Spanish, but it's like I can understand it better than I can speak it. So I feel you. It's really difficult trying to pick up a new language.
For sure. Yeah, and I feel like since predominantly working, I was using English way more than Spanish. So it was nice though to live somewhere where it's like, okay, when I'm outside of work, then I will use it, whether it's with host family or when I'm out and about meeting new people, things like that. There's an additional layer though that was interesting with Costa Rica, since it does have a lot of tourists from around the world, a lot of people there. It would be frustrating at a time where I was speaking Spanish to them and they just start speaking English back. And it was a mix of probably them thinking, being kind and thinking, oh, I can tell that, Spanish isn't their first, or their native language or whatever. So I'm just going to adapt to it and speak to them in English, or I want to practice my English too. Which, like, I get it, but please, Spanish. So, a lot of the time when I traveled to other countries, I would use Spanish way more than in Costa Rica, which was very interesting.
Right. So, what do you think your favorite memory of your time in Costa Rica in South Central America was?
I think the memories that are at least coming to me just are deal with the environment. So just having these wow, I'm here. I think especially going to any of the beaches in Costa Rica, which is what they're known for mostly. And just being in the ocean and you're looking around and you're seeing these beautiful, palm trees and luscious green, mountains around you while you're in the water, which is nice and warm. I'm very spoiled. I feel like if I, for some reason, want to be in the water over here in the Great Lakes or what have you, I'm going to just be very disappointed and just, be so frigid. But, you're just in this warm water and you're looking around and just floating and maybe have a drink in hand and just taking the moment. Wow, like I'm in paradise, and I'm so lucky and fortunate to live somewhere where people are saving up as much as they can to just enjoy, a weekend or a week or how many days, and I have the accessibility to be here. So I feel like those kind of moments are what, I took a lot of the time and really trying to cherish.
Yeah, that sounds really amazing.
Yeah.
Really, really amazing. I definitely want to make it down there at some point.
Oh, girl, you would love it. Give you a pipa fria in your hand, some booze and coconut water, and just relax and enjoy it. Small country, it has a lot to offer, a lot of different ecosystems there too, so people really enjoy going into the jungle and doing those kind of adventure activities of whitewater rafting, zip lining, doing hikes, different national parks, where they're going to see a volcano. And then each coast is so different. Caribbean has a very different vibe than the Pacific, and yeah, lots to offer. But But yeah, small country can take a while getting from A to B if you're taking the bus, which is what I usually took, but always an adventure with that too. I swear, the bus drivers did not, like, they were ready to just bowl you over. They did not care. I was so glad I didn't have to drive around, because they were, yeah, insane, but thankfully they took me from A to B, so.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that you didn't, get hauled down by a bus while you were down there.
Seriously, paranoid going across the street, even if the, light was green. You're like, okay, if I see something coming at me, I will run.
Yeah. Gosh. Well, if I ever do end up taking a trip down there, I will definitely have to ask you where the best places are to go.
Yes, I would love that. I would come back with you. For sure.
Yes, yeah, let's do it. So, moving forward, what do you think you want to do next?
Ooh, that is the main question, right? I think, too, when, like, the industry that I would love to work for is hurting right now, but I think people being at home as well, they're itching to leave. So I'm sure, and it is one of those industries that does bounce back. So whenever it does, I'm not quite sure. I, potentially could go back with the company I was working with. I think I've always been interested in kind of study abroad companies or programs or operators, since that was something that was a really amazing experience for me too. But right now I'm kind of excited to look into opportunities that are directly dealing with COVID-19. Not necessarily, I'm ready to go to nursing school by any means, but
yeah,
I know I have one friend who she just got the job. I think she just started today, actually. But basically, they're like sanitizing equipment for different medical facilities. So doing the huge hazmat suit, things like that. But just working all the time to, I think, clean equipment and things that medical staff would need right now. And then there's other things that my family's been talking about, like the COVID-19 trackers. So you'd call families who had it, I think, and trying to see who they were in contact with, just get more data. But I know there's other random things out there for sure. I'm slowly gonna work on the resume and update LinkedIn and all that good stuff. But
yeah,
I think things like that would be really interesting now, and hopefully, knowing that they're more temporary, but hopefully more meaningful and having a different purpose during this time as well. So kind of maybe doing some good in that way.
Yeah, I think that's really admirable that you are willing to do something like that and want to get involved in a bigger way.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely I think that would help me at least mentally, just have a goal and it's temporary, it's for now, instead of just, I don't know, doing sales for a random product or I don't know, but also what is available, so that whatever is available, just kind of throwing it out there and say, please hire me, I'm capable, I swear.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I was laid off too, so I'm in the same boat, trying to figure out what my next move is.
What are you thinking?
Well, I studied journalism and communications in college, so I'm thinking, my last job was in social media, so I'm trying to find something in the vein of marketing, social media, and I am just in the mode of whoever will hire me in this moment, I will take that job.
For sure.
So I do have an interview coming up with a company soon. Yeah.
Well, congrats.
Yeah, thank
send you. All the
Let's
good
see how it
vibes,
goes.
and if I hear anything, I'll definitely send you info, whatever I find.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's weird times, but you know, you'll get through it. I'll get through it. We're all gonna get through it together.
For sure. And we're so capable. So I know it's just a weird time for sure. But
historic time.
Yeah, historic time.
I keep thinking about that.
I know. Actually, when all this started happening, I remember talking to my mom. She was talking to my grandma, and they were just like, what the heck is going on, you know? And my mom was telling me during their conversation, my grandma said that this was a historic time, which completely blew me away of thinking about that generation who's seen so much in their lifetime with world wars or just any of these wars in general over the past, century or so, and the Great Depression and different things with civil rights, first black president, and now this great president that, all triggered, all this, all that in their lifetime for her to say, and, with, I'm sure, other things with Ebola and other, polio, and I think that was during their lifetime, but anyway, like, holy cow, for someone who's seen so much saying this is historic, it really was kind of a wake-up call, but definitely historic in a lot of different ways, and I think talking about how much we're intertwined together in globalization as a whole makes sense why this is wild.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that some good will come out of it, like something, like maybe we'll kind of take a better look at, our impacts or, just our practices.
So. Yeah, definitely. I'm hoping to see a lot of Earth surge within, renewable energy and, people really hopefully reflecting on what they do day to day. I know it's frustrating now with, makes sense, people want to stay safe and clean and whatnot, but then all the products that we're using, single used products, and with plastic, especially, I know that's like a table tosser for me. I'm like, table flip, like, why? It makes sense, I get it, and it's just still destructive. So, if continue on quarantine, if there will be more sustainable practices that we can all do too. But yeah, I'm hopeful that people are more mindful and bigger corporations take charge too.
Yeah, me too. Well, that's pretty much almost it. I just had one more question for you.
Yeah.
So what is something that inspires you?
That is a very good question. What inspires me? Oh gosh, I feel like it's so cheesy.
That's okay.
And I don't know, it's like, I think just selfless people who, and I think that's one thing that really drew me to the job that I had were all the organizations that we found, we as in people before me with the company, because obviously I did not create these programs, but finding these communities. So for instance, I'll break it down, it'll be easier to give an example. Last year I was able to go to Peru with the company, and we connected with a couple of local nonprofits in the area. The main project that we were with was our partner, who was the guide as well, but he pretty much opened up his home in a small town called Andalusias. It's about 30 minutes south of Cusco. But anyway, he opened up his home to have this after-school program for kids in the community who were, at kind of high risk. Their parents were in pretty, low poverty and maybe, were abused at home or things like that. So anyway, just opening up, a safe space for these kids to have full meals. And he was, the money that he got from the company or the company I worked for would go to them, and we would just have kind of quality time with them and helping them learn English or with counting or just playing silly games or doing crafts and things like that. So someone like him who was just so open and wanting to, show kindness and warmth to those kids was super inspiring. And then meeting other people in the community through the other projects that we visited, whether that was a orphanage from these two wonderful people who again opened up their homes and created this orphanage for youth who are at risk and really trying to give them skills to use when they grew up, and having just kind of that love through someone who might not just be direct family, obviously since they were orphans, but just kind of having those family figures in their life. And then another project was these people who, it was called the KWAR Project, and it was mostly to empower and uplift and give jobs to women in the community who, again, come from very poor backgrounds, but educating them and giving these skills to create these dolls, which I actually bought one. Very cute little dolls that they sold all around the world, but gave kind of this purpose to these women. So anyway, that's a lot of things, but I feel like those moments of really hearing about anyone who took charge and saw people who needed extra support and empowering them and just showing love in a certain way, super inspiring.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that is pretty much it. Do you have anything that you'd like to shout out before we sign off?
Well, just anyone who's listening, I hope you're staying safe and healthy and keep listening to this podcast because it's super interesting, and I think learning about other people is always inspiring and cool, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being willing to be on the pod and taking some time out.
For sure.
To
anytime,
join
girl.
me. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Stories from Planet Earth. If you have some time, leave us a review and be sure to subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts. Find us on Instagram at SFPE Podcasts. I'll talk to you next week.